Well, ad hoc video here. I have nothing prepared to say, except to say that this entire election, in terms of the presidential election, is a farce. It is an absolute farce. And if most Americans are unconvinced of that, I feel sorry for them, because none of the candidates that we're being presented with are giving us any viable option short of disaster. Now we have this whole focus on, once again, religious issues in the mainstream media. I'm probably going to post this as a video response to Vocal Brush, because she was quite eloquent in pointing that out. You have basically an issue, a divisive issue, once again, being brought to the forefront when we have much bigger issues in this country to deal with, As if birth control is a major issue in this country. For Christ's sake, it is 2012 and we're still talking about birth control? And the Catholic Church wants to chime in and control the rhetoric when within their own midst, they're protecting pedophiles? And it's not just against the Catholic Church. I mean, for Christ's sake, you've got all these fundy Christians out there who believe Santorum is the next coming of Christ. Don't get me started. I mean, this is just so hypocritical, it's not even funny. In the meantime, we have a looming war with Iran. And if you don't think that's a serious issue, then you're very much mistaken. Because war with Iran means a whole nother ball game. And it is the Iranian civilians who are going to pay the price for that game. The rhetoric in the West is being turned up to the nth degree with the help of course, AIPAC and the Israel lobby. And it is supposed to be all about nuclear weapons. Well, guess what? Israel already possesses nuclear weapons, and so do many of Iran's neighbors. So this has nothing to do with nuclear weapons. What it does have to do with is the geopolitical control of oil-producing countries, of infrastructure and such. That is what this geopolitical game is all about. And in my opinion, okay, let's say Iran actually did develop a nuclear weapon. What would be the result of that? Do you really believe that the Iranian leadership, the mullahs, are crazy enough to launch a first strike against Israel, knowing that their entire nation is going to be annihilated, about 3 hours afterwards? Do you really believe that? Because I don't. You see, all this religious crap, it's all posturing. It's all about control. And of course, yes, the mullahs are using that kind of control as well. You know, they want to get the populace behind them. But they're not stupid. They're not stupid. And they're also not martyrs. They're going to do the martyring. They're going to leave the martyring to somebody else. We cannot risk war with Iran. We just simply cannot do that. It's not birth control which should be the major election issue here. It is war with Iran and continuous warfare throughout the world. That should be the issue. And to Ron Paul's credit, he is the only one out there who has actually raised that issue. And for that, I applaud him. I applaud him wholeheartedly for bringing that issue to the forefront. On the other hand, his whole economic vision for this country, or any place for that matter, is actually part of the cause for these wars, which is precisely the reason why I cannot vote for somebody like Ron Paul. Because, once again, this goes to the underlying issues. It does not matter whether he would be commander-in-chief to stop these wars, because obviously, yes, he would be able to veto things if he actually got into power. But he won't be able to stop the military-industrial complex as a whole, not as a single individual. Only we, the people, can do that, and it's not up to one single person anymore. And so, please, don't pay attention to these major news stories, which are going to be floated out here before the next election, which are trivial in comparison to the danger of World War III. Once we've got that going, you aren't going to be talking about birth control or anything else anymore, because you're going to be looking for food on the streets. There is a problem with robber baron capitalism, with unfettered markets, and with regulations that benefit huge corporations in which the small business person becomes a non-entity. So whenever you hear this rhetoric about small businesses being supported by the United States Chamber of Commerce, you should really take a good look at all of this, because they aren't supporting you small entrepreneurs in any way at all. We're dealing with global conglomerates, and I mean global. This is not just the United States. This is a global issue. And so this is why people who have followed this, not just during the last election season, but people who have followed this for years and years, like myself and many others, who can see this bigger picture developing, which amounts to total mind control, oppression, and a non-free society. And any politician out there, and I don't care whether it's Ron Paul or anybody else, Obama or anybody, is not telling you the truth. First of all, we need to realize that we're completely fucked at this point. And if you can't realize that by now, if you think, you've just been sitting there like the boiling frog and oh yeah, you jumped out once again. No, you didn't jump out. You've been boiled. And I'm afraid nothing else but complete economic collapse will bring about bigger change. This in itself, of course, would be a huge calamity for most people, especially in the West. And that would include me, But we're going on with all these wars about resources and such. And there are so many alternatives to this out there, which have been continuously suppressed for the last 50 years. And they will continue to be suppressed if we legitimize this voting system, which is a farce. As long as Citizens United stands as a decision in the Supreme Court, we have all lost. There are no more citizens other than corporations and people with big money. And even though you can contribute little by little as a person, to somebody's campaign, money, those contributions, should not even be an issue. Everybody has to have enough food and shelter to live. And once you lose that, you've got nothing else to lose. And this is when violent revolutions become possible. I'm not advocating that. I'm just saying that's the reality. Once the majority of people have had finally enough, they're going to revolt one way or the other. Many of us have talked about, Gandhi, the peace movement, peaceful resistance and all that. But Gandhi could not have achieved what he did achieve without other factions whom he spoke out against, which actually did advocate violence. In other words, there was a real threat towards the British elites in India at that time. Gandhi essentially functioned as a conscious go-between. He said, either you can have a peaceful exit or you can have a violent confrontation here. It's your choice. And he chose the non-violent confrontation. This kind of thing will be different in every instance, of course. You have to get first of all, you have to get the majority of the population behind you. And that is not the case here in America. Most of the population still thinks that the corporations and the banks can still save them from ruin. which is why they will vote for the upper 1%, the Koch brothers, and all that shit, and which is why they're bedazzled by somebody like Obama, who gets in through the back door, telling people what they want to hear, but then doing the exact opposite of what he's supposed to be doing. So we either land softly or through an explosion in terms of the truth. That's my 2 cents for today, and I am certainly not going to vote for any presidential candidate in the next election, because I consider the entire thing to be a farce, and it needs to be delegitimized it needs to be delegitimized. It has no legitimacy anymore. Just because you have elections doesn't mean the people have a say-so. You know, don't you think the people in the Soviet Union and in Eastern Europe had elections too? They had elections all the time. We're dealing with a more sophisticated propaganda system here, which is we have a two-party system which is essentially in lockstep with each other in terms of their goals, with only few minor differences. And none of them, I might add, according to in terms of foreign policy. None at all. This is why voting for the lesser evil is not going to be the answer anymore. The entire system needs to be outed for what it is, namely a sham. But as long as people keep working their asses off, not having any time to pay any attention to anything, or coming home and drinking their six-pack and listening to Fox News, nothing in this country is going to change. Things will have to get a whole lot worse before there's even any kind of popular resistance to any of this, where people, instead of being divided, actually go against this as a united front. And that is not coming anytime soon. It will take a long time for that to happen. And I'm sorry, but that's just my assessment. Doesn't mean I'm going to give up fighting. I won't, just like as many other people will give up fighting. But there's only so much you can do, You need to be very realistic about this kind of stuff. And we're in it for the long haul. This stuff is not going to be solved within the next 10 years. I'm afraid it's going to take a lot longer than that. A lot longer, if at all.